Hello? Hi, chat. How are we all doing today? I got a follower in the time that I haven't streamed, so that means we are now one follower away from my follower goal. Which, if this happens at any point during the stream, is not going to happen immediately. Because, like I said, the follower goal is going to be doing an entire stream in a British accent. And if I get a follow we through, that's not the entire stream. So, whatever my next stream is, will be that if we hit the follower goal today. Mark my words. I also gotta think of sub-goal ideas now, but I literally don't know what I could do. I also made one channel point redemption. That, like, one custom one, that is. It's literally just me drink water. That's it. But yeah, today we are going to be reading chapter 12 of The Stars and Their Children. Listening to you read these fics makes me more and more concerned for a stream where you speak in a British accent. What do you mean? My British accent is a lot better than most people's are, I would like to think. Like, not actual British, like, Americans trying to make a British accent, you know? Yep, sure. What do you mean? What do you mean? I'm right. Anyway, I'm really glad I was able to find the time to stream today. I figured to make a, wait, what do you think I mean? Wait, I might have misread the room. I thought you meant that I'm terrible at a British accent. Or maybe... Nah, no, it's okay, Yeah. I got you. Yes, you are. Okay, cool. Nice. Yeah, I'm glad I found the time to stream today, because I probably won't be able to for the next couple of days. Don't know how next week is gonna go, because that's when my classes start up. And who knows how much homework I'll have in that time. But considering it's the first week, but it's also college, you never know. Alright. Enough with the chatter. Sorry, that was my hydro flask. I got a free hydro flask last night for, singing Don't Stop Believin' at the silent disco. Alright. Here we go. Oh my god, what? Yeah. Anybody that sang during the silent disco last night got, like, free merchandise, basically. I wanted the beanie, but my only options were white hydro flask or blue hydro flask, so I picked the blue one. Yo, clay singing, so true. Alright. As always, The Stars and Their Children is written by Bones and the Bees. I highly recommend that you check out their other stuff, or her other stuff, because it is so good. Especially Tommy and Its Clinic for Supervillains. I already read that on stream, so you're gonna have to read that on your own time. Yeah. Recommends I already have. Good on you. Alright. Chapter 12. Grains of sand in an hourglass. Summary. Wilbur and Tommy have a disagreement, and both get a stark reminder that they don't have unlimited time. Trigger warnings for this chapter: minor descriptions of derealization/dissociation. Okay. Keep that in mind. If I don't know if there's gonna be any, like, visual indication on screen, but if I notice, like, a moment where that happened, like, the moment before it happens, I will let you know, so you can go, like, either, like, visual or audio only, if you need. Your safety is my number one priority. The morning after his encounter with Phil's in the library, Wilbur felt off. Okay, I have a feeling that it's going to be like, this is the moment, like right now. His skin was too tight for his body. There was an itch deep inside of him he couldn't scratch. His blood was boiling and something had shifted deep inside his chest. It was like his body was a room, and while he slept, every single piece of furniture had been shifted 2 centimeters to the left. Something was off, but it was impossible to tell exactly what. Phil's words kept playing on repeat in his mind. Wilbur had thought that knowing his intentions would make things easier, would help him feel more in control of his position on Zephyr's 4. But asking that fateful question had done the exact opposite. Because Philza wanted him. Orpheus Wilbur Sooty. The bastard prince. The queen's mistake. I could carve you into something more. Something great. Carving. Using a blade to cut out a desired object from a solid material. Philza wanted to chisel away at him. To cut and cut and cut until he transformed Wilbur into what? A reflection of himself? A puppet he could use to control others? Wilbur didn't know. All Philza had said was that he'd be something great. But Wilbur wasn't meant for greatness. This was something he'd known since he was 3 years old, and had the name City given to him by Tommy's father. A permanent reminder of what the king thought of him. A reminder that he wasn't supposed to be on Eldingvegr. He wasn't supposed to be anywhere. It was a reminder that he shouldn't have been born. Sticky eyes fluttered open at the sound of a loud crash. He bolted upright, heart leaping into his throat as explosions echoed in his ears. And memories of Silverwood trees set a light burned in his mind. Memories of Silverwood trees set a light burned in his mind. Shit! I didn't mean to wake you! Tommy squeaked out as soon as Wilbur met his gaze. It took Wilbur a second to fully process what he was seeing. Also, sometimes for some reason my fan randomly makes noises. Like that. It's been happening ever since we moved everything up to my dorm. And I don't know how to fix it, so will you shut up? Let's see, where was I? It took Wilbur a second to fully process what he was seeing. There was a table in the center of the bedroom that certainly hadn't been there before. A cart with wheels and a blue tablecloth on top. Several dishes covered with silver lids dotted the top of the table. Steam curling out from underneath and filling the room with the wonderful smell of roasted meat and freshly baked bread. In front of Tommy, one silver lid was discarded, laying upside down on the ground. There was one plate that was uncovered, the missing lid presumably being the one that had been dropped, and Wilbur saw that Tommy had been reaching for a plate full of breakfast food. Are they not holding breakfast in the dining hall today? Wilbur muttered, blinking a few times as he tried to wake himself up. They are, Tommy told him, bending down to pick up the lid that had woken Wilbur. But you were still sleeping, and I didn't want to wake you up because, fuck, I cannot speak. Hi, Markia. How's it going? Reading chapter 12. Let's see. But you were still sleeping, and I didn't want to wake you up, but I was really hungry. I figured we could just have the servants bring us breakfast today, so I called it in, and it just got here a few minutes ago. Letting out a breath of relief, Wilbur slumped over his own knees as his heartbeat slowed to a regular pace once more. You could have just woken me, you know. I don't want to sleep the whole day away or anything. Tommy shrugged, picking his plate up. Also, I feel like the music is a bit too loud. I'm gonna turn it down just a tad. There we go. Congrats. Wait, thank you. Also, at the 15, I think it's at the 15-minute mark, ads are gonna play. I think 15 minutes and then hour mark. So, please watch ads. It gives me money. And if you don't want ads, you can subscribe. Peepo shy. Oh, volume's good now? Good. Let's see. Tommy shrugged, picking his plate up off the table and sitting it on the end of the bed. You haven't been sleeping well lately, he said, setting the plate on his lap before taking a bite of a bread roll. Of course he noticed. Tommy noticed everything about Wilbur these days. All his failures, all his shortcomings. To Tommy, Wilbur was a sheet of glass. There was nothing he could hide from his little brother. Wilbur shoved down the resentment curling around his gut at that realization. Why didn't you just go to the dining hall on your own? Wilbur asked, rubbing at his eyes. Something nervous flashed over Tommy's face, and he took a quick bite of his food to hide it. Just didn't feel like going without you. Even if Wilbur was more out of it than usual these days, he could still tell when Tommy was lying to him. Let's try that again, Wilbur said, his voice still rough with sleep. Why didn't you go to the dining hall without me? There was a beat of silence as Tommy stared at his food, like the strips of fried teeth that were going to tell him what to say. It was then the realization dawned on Wilbur. Why Tommy would be so nervous to even leave the room while Wilbur was sleeping. And the understanding that came with the realization was like something sharp piercing straight through his chest. Did you think I would be angry? Wilbur asked after a minute passed, words far softer this time. Was Tommy afraid of him now? Was that what was going on? Had the little brother who had never shied away from pushing Wilbur's buttons afraid of upsetting him over something as small as going to breakfast without him? To his surprise, though, Tommy immediately shook his head. What? No, that's not it at all. Huh? Wilbur frowned. Then what is it? Sighing, Tommy moved the plate off his lap and turned to face Wilbur fully on the bed. Hold on. There's a little thing. Oh, yay! Yay! Got ads! Yay! Let's go! I didn't know if they were working or not. I know that even though we've been here for a while now, if I woke up and you just weren't in the room at all, it freaked me the fuck out. At least for a few minutes. He curled in on himself, eyes dropping to his lap. I didn't want you to get scared that something happened to me. Oh. Somehow that was worse than Tommy being afraid that Wilbur would be mad at him. It was a stark reminder that despite how they had both settled into their routines on Cephas 4, the night of the takeover still haunted both of them. Of course, Wilbur knew this already. He knew it when he woke up to the sound of whimpers in the middle of the night and saw Tommy trapped in a nightmare. or when Wilbur himself had woken up hyperventilating, with Tommy hugging him and whispering that it was okay over and over again until Wilbur was able to breathe again. According to Tommy, Wilbur had been talking in his sleep, saying Tommy's name over and over, begging Dream not to hurt him. Wilbur had been immensely grateful he didn't remember the dream himself. Even if they were physically safe for now, neither one of them was free from that night on Eldingvegger. Wilbur hated whenever he was forced to remember that fact, especially when it resulted in Tommy going out of his way to try and make sure Wilbur didn't get freaked out. That wasn't Tommy's job. Wilbur needed to be doing that for Tommy, not the other way around. You shouldn't be worrying about that, Wilbur told him, bringing his knees up to his chest. I can take care of myself. You saying that because you wouldn't have been freaked out? Or because you still think I shouldn't be allowed to worry about my brother? Tommy challenged, raising an eyebrow at him. Wilbur swallowed down the lump in his throat. I'm an adult, Tommy. I can handle my own shit. You're a fucking idiot, that's what you are. Tommy huffed, crawling across the bed so he was sitting right in front of Wilbur. You're older than me, yeah, but that doesn't mean no one should worry about you. Tommy, Wilbur groaned, dragging his hands down his face. I don't want you worrying about me. You're a kid. You shouldn't have to spend your time worrying if you can go to fucking breakfast or not because your older brother is still sleeping. At this, Tommy's brows furrowed. What is it then? Am I a kid who shouldn't have to worry? Or am I an idiotic child who's gonna get us killed because I don't know how to negotiate? Wilbur winced, having known deep down that that argument from so many weeks ago would come back to haunt him. Those are two different situations. He tried. Tommy scoffed. Yeah, right. Tell me who to be then, Wilbur. Prince Theseus, the future king of Eldingvegger? Or Tommy, your stupid little brother who'll just listen to whatever the fuck you say? Because I can't seem to do anything right these days, and it's getting really goddamn frustrating. As he spoke, Tommy's voice got louder and louder, which is probably something that I can't do because I live in a dorm now. There are other people around me. I don't want people getting concerned that I'm shouting. So, sorry. And Wilbur shrunk back at the unexpected display of rage painting Tommy's face. He wasn't sure where this anger was stemming from, but it seemed like something that had just been sitting beneath the surface for quite a while now. Tommy, come on, that's not what I'm trying to do here. Then you need to tell me what you're trying to do! Then you need to fucking tell me what you're trying to do! Tommy exclaimed, throwing his hands in the air. I'm trying so goddamn hard to understand what you're thinking, but you're not talking to me anymore. You didn't tell me that you spoke to Schlatt in private. You're acting super fucking weird and paranoid, and last night you left while I was sleeping and didn't come back for hours. Shit. You woke up? Wilbur asked, flinching under Tommy's angry glare. I did, Tommy told him, clenching his jaw. I woke up and freaked the fuck out because you weren't there. And I sat there frozen for ages, trying to think if I should go after you or not. I had no idea where you were, so I wasn't sure if you would come back, or if you were literally about to be executed and I was just sitting in bed staring at the goddamn ceiling. He took a shaky breath, some of his anger fading as the seconds ticked on, and being replaced with something far heavier. When you came back, I pretended to be asleep, just to see what you'd do. I thought you might, I don't know, try to wake me up, but you didn't. You just went back to bed, and I figured you might tell me what happened in the morning. Instead, I'm getting a lecture on how I'm apparently stupid for giving a shit about my brother. This was bad. Wilbur hadn't even considered telling Tommy what Philza said to him the night before. That felt like something that should be kept between him and the Emperor. He didn't want that to hang over Tommy's head. Not right now, at least. I trust you with my life, Tommy then whispered, all his sparks of anger having completely died out, leaving only hollow coldness behind. But it's getting hard when everyone around us is telling us to do the exact opposite of what you're telling me. It's even harder when you've made it clear you don't trust anyone anymore. Not even me. Angst people. Hold on, I need to clean my glasses. Also, I'm fairly certain I packed my Listerine patches with me, but I can't remember where I put them, and I don't feel like going through my backpack right now. So, this'll be fun. I mean, my roommate has gum, and I guess I could ask if I could have a piece. It's mint, so it might do the trick. Like, my throat doesn't hurt yet, but still. I wear glasses? Yeah, I wear glasses. Oh. If you only watch my Twitch streams, you wouldn't know that. And my profile picture doesn't have glasses. Yeah. I post a lot on TikTok, so you could see what I look like there, I suppose. Oh, wait, you follow me on TikTok, don't you? Or is that just Twitter? You're good. Let's see, where was I? No, this wasn't what Wilbur wanted. He had been trying to keep extra weight off of Tommy's shoulders, not make his little brother think he didn't trust him anymore. Guilt wrapped around his chest like a vice. Wilbur hunched over, wrapping his arms tight around his knees and burying his face in the blankets still draped over his legs. He took a few breaths, struggling to calm the maelstrom in his mind. The breathing exercises weren't working. His thoughts were spinning too fast, and his heart was pounding even louder than the waves. I'm sorry. But do you mind if I zoom in the text for a bit? I'm reading along. Oh yeah, totally. What was it, this? Oh, I don't like that. Go back. There we go. Oh wait, does it? I think I had it at this setting before. But I guess once I close the tab, it like defaults back. Let's see. I'm sorry, Wilbur forced out, doing everything he could to shove down the anxiety buzzing inside of him. I trust you. Fuck, of course I trust you, Tommy. Was that true? Wilbur wasn't sure. He wasn't sure of anything anymore. Then tell me where you went last night, Tommy said, keeping his distance from Wilbur on the bed. Thanks, you're welcome. Air rattled through Wilbur's lungs as he forced another breath. The grip around his chest wasn't loosening, but he was able to breathe, and for now that was enough. I went to the library, he said, lifting his head from his knees to meet Tommy's eyes. I couldn't sleep, so I figured if I read some books on the Badlands, it'd tire me out. From there, Wilbur proceeded to tell Tommy exactly what happened with Philza. As much as it pained him to, he didn't leave any part out, even emphasizing Philza's threat towards him at the end of their conversation. By the time he finished, Tommy had gone pale. He was silent for a few beats, eyes darting around the room like he was trying to look anywhere but at Wilbur's face. Internally, Wilbur's gut clenched, a looming sense of dread settling on his shoulders. That's fucking creepy, Tommy finally muttered. Wilbur forced out a pained snort. Yeah, you could say that again. Tommy didn't crack a smile, and the effect was more unsettling than Wilbur thought it would be. I guess it makes sense since Phil's always talked to you during our meetings, Tommy muttered, running a hand through his hair. It's probably just some new attempt at a power play or something. Wilbur tried to deflect. There was another moment of quiet as Tommy considered this. Wilbur noticed he was twisting his fingers together in his lap, and in the past, he might have reached out to grab Tommy's hand and squeeze it in silent reassurance, to tell him that everything was going to be okay. Wilbur didn't do that this time. I'm gonna say something. It's really gonna piss you off, but I think one of us needs to admit it, Tommy finally said, sounding far more serious than Wilbur had ever heard him before. He took another breath to steady himself, before lifting his eyes to meet Wilbur's head-on. I don't think there's a way for us to get out of joining the Empire. For a moment, the words didn't register in Wilbur's head. Instead, Tommy's voice just echoed in his ears, repeating the sentence over and over as he struggled to wrap his mind around it. Then it hit him. What the fuck? Wilbur shouted, rage ballooning in his chest. You're not... Tommy, come on, you're not saying what I think you're saying. And what if I am? Tommy challenged, straightening his shoulders. Wilbur, we need to wake the fuck up. Phil's and Technoblade aren't willing to give us any leeway in the negotiations. The Badlands aren't going to take our side of things. We have literally no power here, and if we try to leave, Dreamer's going to hunt us down and kill us. I know you keep saying we can't join the Empire, but I think we need to start considering— No! Wilbur cut him off, pushing the blankets off his legs. Are you saying you're just giving up? That you're totally fine with giving up our home to the fucking Antarctic Empire just like that? Of course I'm not fine with it, Tommy argued, but the more I think about it, the more fucked we really are. And now hearing that Philza wants to mentor you or whatever only makes it worse, because that means he has even less reason to let us stay independent. It's not over, Wilbur hissed, lunging forward so he was right in Tommy's face. This is what they want, don't you see? They want us to give up all hope. They want us to think we have no other choice, but we don't give in. That's how you win negotiations, Tommy. You keep the pressure on. Tommy stared him down, a few tense seconds ticking by with agonizing slowness. Wilbur could feel his heart pounding in his ears. Tommy glared at him, icy flames dancing in his bright eyes. There were enough sparks inside of him to burn Wilbur if he wanted, and Wilbur knew he was standing far too close to get away in time if that happened. Still, he stayed. I don't know if you heard that. I got a... One second. That was my student email. I need to check this real quick. Okay, we're good. It was an important email. I needed to read it. Sorry. But now I'm thirsty. Still, he stayed, and as the moments passed on, he watched the flames die down. Then, after what felt like ages, Tommy scowled and looked away. "I'm just saying we should think about it," Tommy muttered, wrapping his arms around himself. "And I'm saying that's fucking stupid," Wilbur shot back, pushing off the bed to his feet. "We're not giving up." "We can't let Philza win," was the part that Wilbur didn't say out loud, but he still thought all the same. At this point, it felt as though he and Philza were playing one of the most complicated games of chess of all time. Philza was only a few moves away from being able to call checkmate, but he wasn't there yet. There was still time for Wilbur to figure out an alternate strategy. Grabbing a bread roll off the table, Wilbur tossed a coat over his pajamas and stormed towards the door. "I'm going for a walk," he said, shooting Tommy a dark look as the door slid open. You're not gonna eat breakfast?" Tommy asked, his voice strangely flat as he gestured to the table. Wilbur held up the roll. "You eat the rest. I'll be back later." Then, before Tommy could say anything else, Wilbur hurried into the hallway. While Wilbur knew it probably wasn't the best to just storm out after a fight like that, he also knew he couldn't be around Tommy for a second longer. There was so much going on in his head, rage dancing with frustration and grief bubbling up inside of him as he was once again hit with the realization that he was failing at his one job. It was too much for him to handle right now. If he hadn't left right when he did, he was going to say something he regretted, and he couldn't afford to put any more strain on his and Tommy's relationship at the moment. That was a surreal thought to have. Realizing that for the first time in their entire lives, he had to worry about pushing Tommy too far. In a lot of ways, Tommy was Wilbur's other half. After the death of their mother, the two had rarely been apart for more than a few hours at a time. As a baby, Tommy would cry if he and Wilbur were taken into separate rooms, and more often than not, he wouldn't fall asleep unless Wilbur was holding his hand. When they got older, Tommy continued to follow Wilbur like a shadow, only leaving his side when his lessons called for it, and Wilbur had never minded. While Nikki was Wilbur's stability, Tommy was his lighthouse. He was the one Wilbur kept his sights on when he needed to remember why he did the things he did. He needed to become an advisor to help Tommy when he took the throne. He needed to protect Tommy when Dream was threatening his life. He needed to keep Eldingvegr away from the Empire so Tommy would have a planet to rule when he turned 18. But now Tommy was saying they needed to consider giving Eldingvegr up. The exact opposite of what Wilbur had been trying to do this entire time. For once, they were truly at odds, and it made Wilbur feel sick to his stomach. So lost in his own thoughts, Wilbur didn't even hear the voices echoing in the hall until he almost turned the corner, stopping himself at the last second. "Carl, come on, tell me now. What's this meeting gonna be about?" Wilbur recognized Tina's voice on the other side of the wall, and listened as her and presumably Carl's footsteps clicked in tandem with one another, the two of them moving further away from Wilbur's side of the hall. "You're so impatient sometimes," Carl giggled. "We'll find out in a few minutes." "But I want to know now," Tina whined, and Wilbur risked peeking around the corner to see the princess and the seer heading towards the meeting room. Wilbur waited for them to get a fair enough distance away before he darted out from behind the corner, ducking into an alcove so he could keep listening to them talk. From what he could tell, there was another meeting about to start, and obviously he and Tommy hadn't been invited to it. "I haven't even seen most of the meeting, Tina," Carl told her, his deep red cloak swishing around his calves with every step. "I only know what the end result is gonna be." "But then tell me that! I wanted to sleep in so badly, but no! Apparently having another secret meeting was too important to hold off till after lunch," Tina complained, slumping against Carl's side. The doors to the meeting room were being held open. Wilbur ran out of his current alcove to duck into a closer one, wondering if he'd be able to eavesdrop like he had before. Admittedly, it was different this time, given that it was the middle of the day and not late at night. But maybe Wilbur would get lucky for once in this miserable palace. Maybe no one would walk by his alcove, and he would be able to listen to the latest secrets Filzel wanted to share with the other leaders, so he could actually get an idea of what he was supposed to do next. Right now, Wilbur needed a plan more than ever before. Tommy was losing faith in him, and Wilbur understood why. The bleakness of their situation was looming over him, and he knew there was only so much more stress the two of them could handle before they both snapped in two. "Princess Tina?" Puffy's voice suddenly cut in, making Wilbur jump. "Marquise Carl, you two are the last to arrive." Tina sighed. "Our apologies, Captain." "It's no worry. We've only been waiting for a few minutes," Puffy reassured her. "But please hurry inside. His Majesty has important things to discuss. And I need more water." It's so weird. There's like a little toolbar, I guess, on my stream manager where I can edit the stream info, like make clips. I'm not used to having the 60-second ad button, the sub-only chat button, the minute prediction button, and the poll button. It's gonna take a while for me to get used to. And also the gift a sub now to be #1. And the infinite channel points. Because as the streamer, I have infinite channel points. Let's see. Wilbur listened as Tina and Carl's footsteps faded into the room, with Puffy quickly following. Sitting up straighter, Wilbur tried to listen to what was going on inside the room itself, but was almost immediately greeted with the sound of the door sliding shut. Okay, I wanted to make sure that my mic was still working, because, like... Okay, I feel like the music might be a bit too loud. I'm going to turn it down here. There we go. Glancing out from his alcove, Wilbur sighed when he saw the meeting room was closed off. No sound was escaping through the cracks, which meant that it was hopeless for Wilbur to think he could hear anything that was going on inside. Just get a cup, put it against the wall. I've seen it work in H2O. He slumped against the wall, dragging his hands through his hair and cursing internally for his bad luck. It was almost worse to know that they were having another clandestine meeting without being able to find out what was going on inside. If Wilbur hadn't overheard Tina and Carl talking just now, at least he'd be able to go about his day without his nerves practically eating up his insides. Well, his nerves would have done that either way, but it was certainly worse now than it would have been otherwise. Once again, Wilbur was so lost in his own thoughts, he didn't hear the footsteps until a figure appeared in the corner of his eye. Will? Fuck! Wilbur yelped, whipping his head around to meet Amesie's dark eyes. Amesie jumped at Wilbur's shout, their flowers sticking straight up like they were mirrors of their body. "Katu, you scared me!" they exclaimed, and it took Wilbur a beat to recognize the curse as a word in Floslia's most common language. "You scared me first," Wilbur argued, using the wall to push himself to his feet. "Well, I'm not the one hiding in a dark corner for no good reason," Amesie pointed out, folding their arms over their chest. "What are you doing anyway?" It was then Wilbur realized how bad of a position he was in right now. Crouched in an alcove, ear pressed to the wall right next to the meeting room. If Amesie took a moment to actually look at him, they'd realize what he was doing in seconds. "I was just, he stammered, struggling to come up with an excuse. "I was going for a walk." It was a pathetic excuse and he knew it, but it was the only thing he could think of in such a split-second moment. Excuse me. Amesie narrowed their eyes, looking him up and down. He squirmed under their gaze, wondering if he could make up some bullshit lie about Tommy waiting for him back in their room so he could leave before they had time to question him. But before he could try to say anything else, Amesie let out a breath, and their face relaxed. "You and Tommy didn't come to breakfast this morning," they pointed out, their voice soft. "Did you guys get into a fight or something?" Well, they did, but that wasn't why they didn't come to breakfast. Still, Amesie didn't need to know that. "Yeah," Wilbur admitted, letting his shoulders drop. "I was out walking to try and cool my head off." "Do you need to talk about it?" Amesie offered, the flowers in their hair and on their cheeks turning to face Wilbur. Wilbur shook his head. "No, it's fine." He couldn't tell anyone about their argument this morning. The fact that Tommy was starting to give in to the demands of the Empire was something no one in the palace could find out about. If word somehow got back to Filzer or Technoblade, they would know their plan was working, and would start to push even harder than they already were. Amesie's flowers drooped, but they didn't seem angry with Wilbur. Instead, they just seemed resigned as they let out a quiet sigh before meeting his eyes again. "That's fine, I get it. But are you okay?" That question took Wilbur off guard, because it wasn't what he expected Amesie to say at all. Maybe he expected them to push, or maybe he expected them to get annoyed at his blatant distrust and walk away. Maybe he just expected them to accept the rejection and leave, since he was making it clear he didn't want to be in this conversation right now. He didn't expect them to ask if he was okay, not with genuine concern that was practically dripping from their words. The truthful answer sat on the tip of his tongue. No. No, he wasn't okay. No, he hadn't been okay since that fateful night on Eldenveger. No, nothing was okay anymore, and he wasn't sure if there was any way it could ever be okay again. But he couldn't show weakness. Not now. Especially not to a member of the Empire. "It was just a stupid fight. We're fine," he lied. Amesie frowned, clearly not believing him. But before they could open their mouth to call him out, he was shoving past them to get out of the alcove, turning on a heel to hurry back to his room. "I'd better get going. I'll see you later, Amesie," Wilbur said, refusing to turn back as he rushed away from them. He heard them call out to him, but he ignored it and kept walking. For a minute, he could hear their footsteps following him, but they seemed to realize it was a bad idea to push him anymore, and the clicking of their shoes against the stone dropped off, and Wilbur was alone again. Although Wilbur hadn't necessarily been trying to go back to his room yet, his feet carried him there anyway. When he spotted his and Tommy's door, his gut clenched, nervous to see how Tommy would greet him when he came back inside. While he debated turning around and heading to the library to hide for a few more hours, Wilbur was still in his pajamas, and he knew he was going to have to get changed sooner or later. I need more water. 1 second. Stopping right outside the door, Wilbur took a breath to try and slow the pounding in his chest. Things were fine. Even if Tommy was still giving him the cold shoulder, it wouldn't last for long. Worst case scenario, he just got changed and left again. Sure, it was avoidance, but Wilbur thought he was allowed a little avoidance given how much he'd been going through as of late. Right before Wilbur could press the button to open the door, there was a soft whoosh, and the door opened on its own. To Wilbur's surprise, he wasn't met with Tommy's angry scowl. Instead, he found himself face to face with Rambu. The Indirian flinched at their unexpected eye contact, and Wilbur quickly dropped his gaze to stare at his chin instead. Hi, Prince Orpheus, Rambu said, flashing Wilbur a weak smile. Hello, Rambu, Wilbur replied, mind reeling as he tried to figure out why Rambu would be in his room. I was just leaving, Rambu quickly explained, sidestepping Wilbur to get out of the doorway. Tommy and I were just talking for a bit, but I'm heading out now, so, you guys have the room to yourselves again. A nervous laugh bubbled up from his throat, and it grated on Wilbur's ears. Wilbur narrowed his eyes. Theseus, you call him I gave him permission to call me that, Tommy told him from inside the room. Now that Rambu had moved out of the way, Wilbur could see Tommy sprawled across the bed, hugging a pillow to his chest and an empty breakfast plate sitting in front of him. What? While Wilbur had noticed that Tommy and Rambu were growing closer by the day, he didn't think it was anywhere near the level of Tommy granting Rambu permission to use his personal name. When Wilbur's eyes darted back to Rambu, he could see that the kid was practically sweating bullets. Anyway, I gotta go, Rambu stammered, hurrying down the hall. See you guys later. And just like that, Rambu was gone. Wilbur stared after him for a moment, before letting out a deep breath and turning back to his room. He fully stepped inside, the doors hissing as they slid shut behind him. Then, he was alone with Tommy once again. Tommy wasn't looking at him. His eyes were on his empty plate, and he was twisting his fingers into the fabric of the pillowcase. Why was he in here? Was the first thing Wilbur asked. Because I called him in, Tommy explained. He waited for an elaboration. Tommy didn't provide it. Why? Wilbur pushed. At this, Tommy scoffed. I was trading all of our top state secrets with him because I fucking felt like it. Is that what you want to hear? Wilbur frowned. Seriously, Tommy, why was he in here? Why do you fucking think? Tommy asked, finally looking up to raise an eyebrow at him. We got into a fight. I was pissed, so I wanted to rant to someone about it. The situation itself wasn't unfamiliar to Wilbur. Back on Eldingvegger, whenever he and Tommy got into a fight, it was practically routine for Tommy to hole himself in a room with Tubbo to complain about what a bitch Wilbur was. Meanwhile, Wilbur would do the same with Nikki, ranting to her about how childish and stubborn Tommy was. And Nikki would listen as patiently as she could before telling him outright what an idiot he was being. They both liked to complain about their problems to those they trusted. That wasn't something Wilbur had a problem with. What Wilbur had a problem with was the fact that trust wasn't a luxury either one of them had anymore. Did you tell him what we fought about? Wilbur questioned, taking a step towards the bed. Did you tell him what you told me about the negotiations? Instead of shrinking back at the dark note in Wilbur's voice, Tommy seemed to take it as a challenge. He straightened up, meeting Wilbur's gaze with as angry of a glare as he could muster. What does it matter to you? Rambo's my friend. I can choose what I want to tell him. He might be your friend, but he's also Technoblade's protege, Wilbur reminded him, his words like shards of glass. You have to assume anything you tell him is going to go straight back to— That's not true! Tommy shouted, cutting Wilbur off. Rambo's my friend. He wouldn't do that. You don't know that, Wilbur shot back, slamming his hands down on the edge of the mattress. You've known Rambo for, what, a month? You have no goddamn clue if you can trust him or not. But I know I can because I've actually talked to him, Tommy snapped. You're always such a dick to him, treating him like he's an idiot or that he's not even worth the time of day. But he's actually a genuinely good person. You'd know that if you stopped treating him like he's the enemy. But he is the enemy, Wilbur shot back. Everyone here is our enemy. What don't you get about that? The other leaders are literally having a secret meeting right this fucking second, probably discussing 1,000 more ways they could screw us over. Now that made Tommy falter. What? Clenching his jaw, Wilbur forced a slow breath through his nose to try and calm the heat rising in his chest. Just now, when I was walking in the halls, I heard Tina and Carl talking about a meeting they were going to. I watched them go into the meeting room, with Puffy saying the others had already arrived. Did you hear what they were talking about? Tommy asked, furrowing his brows. Wilbur shook his head. They shut the doors. But either way, they're probably planning some more bullshit against us right this second. But Rambo's not in that meeting, Tommy pointed out. His mentor is, though, Wilbur reminded him, straightening up from the bed and sliding his coat off his shoulders. Tommy narrowed his eyes. You're a fucking asshole, you know. Huffing, Wilbur pretended the words didn't feel like a stab in the chest as he turned to head towards the bathroom, hoping a shower might calm him down. If I'm an asshole that keeps us from losing everything, then so be it. Without waiting to hear Tommy's response, Wilbur hurried into the bathroom, letting out a shaky breath as soon as the doors slid shut behind him. His entire body felt too heavy to hold up, and when the water began to beat down on his skin, he found himself sliding to the ground. The cool tile dug into his back, a stark contrast to the hot water droplets pounding against his face. It wasn't relaxing, not in the slightest, but even still, his mind began to drift. Water is so underrated. It's okay, Will, Nikki whispered to him, her scaled hands rough against his palms as she squeezed his fingers. Just try to breathe. He couldn't. He couldn't breathe. There was a cage around his lungs, keeping him from sucking in even a single full breath. He was gasping for air, dark spots dancing around his vision as he pressed himself further against his bed, trying to hide the tears streaking down his cheeks. No, 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 he hiccuped, before another sob tore from his throat. He hates me, Nikki. He hates me, and he's not going to forgive me. He doesn't hate you, she reassured him, tracing circles into the back of his hands with her thumbs. Tommy's just mad, but he doesn't actually hate you. You know he always forgives you eventually. Not this time, Wilbur insisted, shaking his head. I fucked up. I fucked up so badly. What did you say? Nikki asked, her voice soft but firm. Wilbur took a shuddering breath, his lungs rattling against the cage once again. I didn't mean it. I don't even know why I said it. I'm sure you didn't mean it, but what did you say? He squeezed his eyes shut, not wanting to meet Nikki's eyes as shame bubbled up inside of him. We were having a fight. He got really mad. He asked if I... His breathing hitched, but he kept going. He asked if I ever wished that it was him that died instead of Mom. Nikki sucked in a sharp breath. And you... I said yes, Wilbur confessed, the words spilling out of him in a sob. I don't know why I said yes, because that's not true. I wouldn't trade anything for Tommy, but I was just so mad, and he was so mad, and my head was going too fast. He gasped for air again, the dark spots growing larger in his vision. Fuck. He really couldn't breathe now. Tommy was going to hate him forever for that. It was the worst thing he could have said, and Wilbur had no idea why his traitorous mind had made him whisper yes instead of no, like he so desperately wanted to. Suddenly, there were scaled palms cupping his cheeks, and Wilbur was forced to meet Nikki's glowing gaze as she pulled his head away from his knees. Wilbur? She began, her eyes narrowed. Calm down. Her words echoed with her voice, and the command sunk into Wilbur's bones. The cage lifted from his chest without any effort on his part, and his heart rate dropped almost immediately. The panic ebbed away, and Wilbur slumped forward, his face falling into Nikki's shoulder as he went completely boneless. I'm sorry, she whispered, wrapping her arms around him to hug him tight. You were going to pass out. It's okay, Wilbur whispered back, his words slurred. I needed it. The seconds ticked on. Wilbur's thoughts drifted back to him, moving far slower than they had just a few moments before. He could breathe again, and the panic was no longer seizing every cell in his body. Tommy will forgive you, Nikki told him, but you can't run away from this. You need to apologize to him and explain that you didn't mean it. Wilbur took a breath, relishing in how he was finally able to fill his lungs all the way. Then, he let it out, then pulled back to meet Nikki's eyes again. Would you forgive me if you were in Tommy's shoes? He asked softly. Nikki stared at him for a moment, conflict dancing in her gaze. Then she shook her head. No, I wouldn't. But I'm not as kind of a person as Tommy is, she told him, dropping her hands from his shoulders. You know I hold grudges. I don't think Tommy could hold a grudge to save his life. Wilbur let out a weak laugh. Yeah, that's a good point. There was another pause. I don't think I'm a kind person either, Wilbur then admitted, the words little more than a whisper. Nikki stared at him for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then, she took his hand in her own again, and the tips of her nails just barely dug into his skin. I don't think either of us were meant to be kind. Wilbur squeezed her hand in return to show he felt the same. I need more water. When Wilbur got out of the shower, he found the room empty with a note left on the bed. It was from Tommy, explaining that he had been summoned to go train with Technoblade again, and that he would see Wilbur in a few hours. It was short and to the point. Wilbur knew his brother well enough to read the cutting tone between the lines. Just because their argument had been put on pause didn't mean anything was resolved. Not even in the slightest. Maybe Wilbur should have spent the day out of his room, wandering around the palace or reading books in the library in an attempt to get out of his own head. But he didn't. Instead, he lay down on the bed, curling up into a ball as if he could hide himself away from the world. Almost like if he was far away enough, his problems wouldn't be able to reach him. His mind drifted. He found himself floating in a space between waking and sleep. He was aware he was on the bed. Okay, this seems like it's gonna be the part with like derealization / dissociation, so if that is a trigger for you, please stay safe, do whatever you need to do. It's okay. He was aware he was on the bed, and in a way it was as if he was watching himself from above his own body. But he wasn't fully there. His mind was hazy, and it was a blessed relief from the frenzy that his thoughts had been in for the past few days. Time passed. Wilbur wasn't sure how long he was floating for, but it was a long time. At one point, he heard the door open, but it was far away. He didn't really register Tommy's footsteps, or the voice asking him questions. The sound was muffled as if he was underwater. His back was turned away from the door so he couldn't see Tommy. And after a few minutes of hearing Tommy say stuff that was probably directed at him, but he couldn't really understand, he was able to hear one thing. I guess you're sleeping, Tommy muttered. At least, Wilbur was fairly sure what he said. was difficult to make out while he was floating like this. Then, the door hissed again, followed by the distant sound of the shower turning on. Even though he wasn't sleeping, he felt the exhaustion tugging on his own eyes. The sound of the shower got louder and louder as the floaty feeling subsided, quickly being taken over by fatigue weighing down his bones. Wilbur was asleep before Tommy got out of the shower. Upon waking, Wilbur found Tommy lounging on one of the chairs in front of the fireplace. He was no longer floating, and a part of him wondered if that had just been a strange dream. Either way, he was back in his body, and with it came a wave of dread. Even if he'd been able to tune out of his mind for a few hours, he couldn't do that forever. His problems were still very real, and right now were taking the form of the blonde teenager sitting on the other side of the room. Okay, I think the talk of dissociation and derealization is over. It is safe to come back. How long did I sleep for? Wilbur asked as he sat up, his voice hoarse. Tommy glanced up, and Wilbur noticed there was a hollow pad in his lap. His expression was guarded as he met Wilbur's eyes, and Wilbur hated the palpable tension that sat in the air between them. A while, Tommy shrugged, swiping on the hollow pad again. You were asleep when I got back from training, so I'm guessing you slept at least half the day. What time is it right now? Wilbur asked, rubbing at his eyes. Almost dinner? The short answer was so stiff, so cold coming from Tommy's mouth. It made a chill run down Wilbur's spine, and he knew that if there was a time to apologize, it should be now. When Wilbur was 15, he had gotten into an argument with Tommy over something stupid. It was a pointless thing in retrospect, but it had devolved into something much larger. Tommy had asked Wilbur if he wished it was him who died instead of their mother, and stupidly, Wilbur had said yes. It wasn't true. And Wilbur had told Tommy that over and over again after Nikki had encouraged him to apologize. For some reason, Tommy had forgiven him. Wilbur didn't think he deserved it and told him such. But Tommy had been firm in his decision that if he wanted to forgive Wilbur, he could, regardless of if Wilbur himself thought he deserved it or not. Would Tommy forgive him now? Sure, the crux of their argument wasn't anywhere near as dramatic as that conversation so many years before. But unlike that childhood fight where their emotions clashed in a bright explosion of heat and flame, their current predicament was much more slow building. Pressure was being pushed down on both of them, with the dial getting turned up more and more by the day. They were squeezed into a box together with the walls closing in on them. This anger between them weren't bright flames, but instead low burning coals that were growing hotter with every sharp word or dirty look. If a piece of glass were snapped in two, it could be glued back together. But if it was crushed into 1,000 pieces, it was ruined forever. But while Wilbur knew this, knew that he needed to apologize now before the pressure got even worse, he couldn't bring himself to open his mouth, because he didn't feel like he was in the wrong here. course, he understood why Tommy was upset, but he didn't trust anyone in the palace, and rightfully so. This wasn't the kind of situation they could make friends in. They were surrounded by enemies on all sides, and the fact that Tommy couldn't seem to recognize that was going to be their downfall. "What are you reading?" Wilbur asked instead after a few moments, not wanting to let the dead air sit between them for too long. Tommy didn't look up from the hollow pad this time. "A book on fighting that Technoblade told me I might like." Oh. That wasn't what Wilbur was expecting. When he didn't respond within the first few seconds, Tommy raised an eyebrow. "What? No pointing out that Technoblade is just trying to manipulate me again? That I shouldn't be letting shouldn't be letting him fill my head with his beliefs or whatever the fuck?" Wilbur winced at that acid in Tommy's words, hating the way it felt like his skin was burning where his vitriol had landed. "No, I was just surprised. Doesn't seem like a book on fighting would be really, as helpful as actually training would be. It's more about the philosophy of it all. How to prep your mind and shit." Tommy shrugged, his tone slightly less hostile now. "I don't know. I think it's interesting." Philosophy. How to prepare your mind to fight. Those words set off alarm bells in Wilbur's head, as he wondered if Technoblade was trying to push his personal philosophies onto Tommy. But he shoved that aside, because that's exactly what Tommy expected Wilbur to say. "How is it interesting?" Wilbur asked instead. Tommy blinked, the lingering anger fading from his face and being replaced with genuine surprise. A beat passed, then another. Wilbur watched the lines on his forehead soften one by one, and something like hope rose up inside his chest once again. When Tommy opened his mouth to speak, though, he was cut off by sharp knocking. "It's dinner time, gents," Jack called out from behind the door. Clenching his jaw, Wilbur swallowed down a curse as he pushed to his feet and walked to the door. He practically slammed the button to open it, and glared when he found himself face to face with Jack Manifold. "Do we have to leave right this second?" Wilbur asked, annoyed that he had been so close to reaching some kind of peace with Tommy for a moment, only for it to be interrupted. Jack didn't seem fazed by Wilbur's anger. "Yup. Everyone's gotta attend. Captain's orders." "What? Do you know why?" "Nope." Jack shook his head. "But I think I heard something about an announcement being made." Immediately, Wilbur's blood went cold. Man, this story's good so far. It is. It really is. Immediately, Wilbur's blood went cold. An announcement. After the secret meeting he'd seen the other leaders having this morning. After what Philza had told him the night before. This couldn't be good. "An announcement?" Tommy questioned, materializing at Wilbur's side. "Yeah, like I said, I don't know the details. That shit's above my pay grade. But you two got to be there, so let's get going," Jack told them, already stepping further back into the hall. Wilbur shared a look with Tommy, and was relieved to see none of the anger that had been practically sparking off of him only a few minutes before. Now, Tommy seemed more confused than anything else, and Wilbur was sure his face echoed the sentiment. I guess we might as well get going then, Wilbur said, slipping on his shoes before following Jack into the hall. After a moment of hesitation, Tommy followed, and the doors slid shut behind them. The halls were empty as they made their way to the dining hall. No voices echoed through the corridor. They didn't catch a glimpse of any other guards going about their daily duties. It was just Wilbur, Tommy, Jack Manifold, and the sound of their footsteps bouncing off the walls. Instead of taking them to the dining hall, though, Jack turned at the last second, and Wilbur belatedly realized they were going to the meeting room. Jack picked up his pace of walking, and after a few more twists and turns, they were back to the same hall Wilbur had been in earlier that morning. The doors to the meeting room were being held open by Puffy. She nodded at Jack as he came into view, gesturing for Wilbur and Tommy to go inside. Then, with Jack left outside, Puffy followed them into the room, and Wilbur's breath caught in his throat. It was a full meeting again. Michael, Schlatt, Carl, Tina, the Badlands, Technoblade, and Filza were all already seated. The same 2 spots besides Filza were left open as always, and Wilbur had to shove down the fear writhing in his gut as he settled himself shoulder to shoulder with the Emperor once more. I thought we were going to get dinner, Tommy said, as soon as they were settled. His eyes narrowed as he looked around the room. Technoblade huffed. You'll get to eat soon. This meeting shouldn't take long. Well, that wasn't very promising. We were informed there was an announcement of some kind being made, Wilbur questioned, ignoring the way everyone's eyes on him made him feel as though bugs were wriggling under his skin. You're correct, Filza said beside him, and Wilbur had to fight the urge not to flinch. The announcement is rather simple, in all honesty. You know how the reason we called this summit in the first place was so the Antarctic Empire could work out its strategy regarding the Elding-Vega situation as a whole, and our personal negotiations would resume after the summit had ended. Wilbur nodded, a palpable weight settling on his shoulders. Well, we've reached a conclusion for what the Empire's goal will be with the negotiations regarding Elding-Vega. That means the summit is over, and all the other leaders will be returning to their home planets tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning. Wait, what? The summit was... it was over? Just like that? They hadn't gotten enough time at all. He and Tommy were supposed to use this time to make connections with the other leaders, to try and garner sympathy and learn what kind of people they were dealing with. It felt as though they had only just begun to scratch the surface of that goal. The leaders couldn't be leaving now. But our negotiations are still ongoing, Wilbur pointed out, wincing when his voice cracked. Negotiations that I thought we needed the rest of the leaders' input on. We've decided what the Empire's goal is going to be with the negotiations regarding Elding-Vega, and we've also discussed what parameters we're all willing to set in regards to the compromise. Now that that's been settled, we'll be resuming negotiations with myself and Techno, Filza explained, and Wilbur could practically feel the smugness radiating off of him in waves. So that's it? Tommy then asked, straightening up in his seat. The summit is over. The summit is over, just like that. Unfortunately, we have to return back to our own planets to resume our duties, Sam explained, his voice far gentler than anything else in the room. I've already been away from Decima for far too long. keep getting calls about decisions I gotta make on Serenity, and it's driving me a bit nuts to try and do all of it over a shitty video call," Michael chimed in, slumping back in his seat. "The harvest is happening on Nona right now, so me and CPK gotta hurry back to manage our exports," Anne Frost told them, his ears twitching. "Trust me, I'd stay here if I could," Tina jumped in, pouting as she folded her arms over her chest. "It's boring on Kanoko, but Carl's gotta get back for the festival, and the council has been at a standstill on one of our votes since I'm usually the tiebreaker in our group." "The festival is for when the lines between the other and the between get blurred," Carl explained excitedly, before anyone even asked what Tina had meant by that. "It'll go very well, but I need to get back to make sure that actually happens." Shit. All of them had to leave. Wilbur should have realized they were running on limited time sooner, but now it was too late. They had missed their chance. Drink break. Glancing to the right, Wilbur met Phil's eyes once again. There was mirth dancing in his gaze. This was another victory being handed to him. Another chip in Wilbur and Tommy's plan. Without the other leaders around, they would be solely at the mercy of Phil's and Technoblade's whims. No one would be able to influence them one way or the other. Judging by the smile on Phil's face, Wilbur could tell this was exactly what he wanted, and he hated the man for it. After a few more platitudes were exchanged, Philza dismissed them all for dinner. Wilbur and Tommy were silent as they walked to the dining hall, and Wilbur wasn't sure if it was because they were both feeling defeated at the news, or if Tommy didn't want to risk speaking to Wilbur after such a drastic upset in their plans. Dinner was a quiet affair. Not for the other leaders, who were celebrating their imminent departure with plenty of Zephyr's 4 vodka, but it was quiet for Tommy and Wilbur. Rombu and Amesy had already heard the news, and they filled the dead air hanging over their part of the table with random chatter about inane things like food and clothing. Tommy joined in on the conversation every once in a while, but Wilbur stayed silent throughout the entire thing. Sand dripped from the hourglass in his mind as he stared at his food. Every second was a second wasted. But what would they have been able to do with more time? The Badlands proved they were going to be of no help to them. Kanoko was a bust, given how Carl seemed dead set on the prediction that Eldingbecker was going to join the Empire. Serenity certainly didn't seem like they would be sympathetic to Eldingbecker when they posed to gain so much from them joining the Empire. And Mantle, well, Wilbur knew full well that Mantle wasn't going to give a shit. It had been a futile effort from the start. The realization weighed on Wilbur's shoulders as Jack led them both back to their room, who was wise enough to know it wasn't a good day to make chit-chat with either of the princes. As soon as they were back in their room, Tommy turned to Wilbur, clearly expecting him to say something on the new development. And Wilbur knew he should. He needed to come up with a new plan, or emphasize how they weren't giving up yet, how this wasn't a major setback for either of them. But he couldn't. Not tonight. Not when he knew that even the simple act of breathing was something he was only being allowed to do. That if Philza wanted, his breathing would stop, and there would be nothing anyone could do about it. "Will?" Tommy asked as Wilbur silently padded over to the bed, his voice far more fragile than it had been before. "Are we going to talk about this?" "Not tonight," Wilbur murmured, slipping off his shoes and taking off his coat as he crawled onto the bed. He set his glasses on the nightstand and buried his face in the pillow to block out the light still on above his head. Just not tonight, Tommy. Wilbur wasn't even tired, thanks to the fact that he'd slept all day, but he didn't have the energy to talk. The energy to even try to think his way out of this. Not right now. Not tonight. Tommy was silent for a moment, and Wilbur could feel his eyes on his back. Then, the light was switched off, and the bed dipped as Tommy crawled in beside him. I wonder if Eldingberger is German? Probably not. I would assume it's just like a made-up planet name. But it doesn't hurt to look. Let's see. Okay, let's try German. It's giving me the option to translate from Icelandic. Oh. Eldingvegr is Icelandic for lightning strike. That is funny. That is funny. Actually, no. Wait, lightning strike? No, it wasn't a lightning storm that killed their mother. It was a windstorm. I need to stretch for a moment. 1 second. Let's see. Lifting his head from the pillow, Wilbur could see the freckles painted over Tommy's nose and cheeks glowing a soft blue, illuminating his pale eyes as he rolled over so he was face to face with Wilbur. The blue glow of their freckles lit up the space between them like starlight. But the stars had always been out of their reach. Whether it was on the eternal twilight of Eldingvegr, or miles beneath the ice on Zephyr's 4, the stars were something Wilbur was wholly unfamiliar with. Yeah, it says it's Icelandic. You know that it's gonna be okay, right, Will? Tommy whispered after a minute of silence. No matter what happens, we'll figure it out. I know we will. But that wasn't true. It was a platitude. A soft lie meant to act as a balm on a bleeding stab wound. Tommy meant well with it, but Wilbur couldn't bring himself to even pretend to believe it. So instead of responding, he just rolled over onto his other side so he wasn't facing Tommy anymore. He couldn't bear to look at the hope shining in his little brother's eyes, knowing that he'd failed him in so many countless ways. Tommy made a hurt noise at the brush off, but didn't say anything else. Wilbur pretended the sound didn't pierce straight through his chest, and hoped that if he pretended enough, he could make himself believe it too. Time passed, Wilbur was wide awake, but it didn't take long for Tommy's breathing to even out behind him. Once he was asleep, Wilbur pushed to his feet without thinking of where he was going. He couldn't just sit in the bed all night, trapped with his thoughts of failure as the morning loomed over him. No, he needed to get out, to find a distraction. Wilbur, did you not learn anything from last night? At least write a note in case Tommy wakes up. Bro. That's how Wilbur found himself standing at Schlatt's door, dressed in his pajamas and craving the burn of vodka in his throat. Dude. I don't like where this is going. Gonna be honest, I wasn't expecting you to stop by tonight, Schlatt said as soon as he opened the door, his grin dripping with sleaze and mirth. Need a nightcap, lover boy? I don't know why I gave him like a need a nightcap, lover boy? Fucking please, Wilbur muttered, shouldering his way past Schlatt and into his room. Schlatt only laughed as he shut the door behind him. Wilbur settled himself in the same plush chair as last time, gaze fixed on the fireplace as he listened to Schlatt pouring the drinks behind him. The room was lit up in shades of warm orange and yellow, flames dancing along the walls and warmth radiating through the space like he had the heater turned high. There was a clink as Schlatt set the glass down next to Wilbur. He turned and saw the drink had been filled almost to the top, and he traced his fingers along the intricately carved crystal as he took a sip. The vodka burnt his throat, and Wilbur hummed pleasantly at the distraction. He then took a larger sip, wincing at the taste, before setting his glass back down. That is not how you take a shot. Oh, wait. Oh, was it just like a regular... It wasn't in a shot glass, was it? Oh, yeah. It was a regular glass, not a shot glass. I thought that he was taking sips from a shot glass, and I was like, my guy. That is not how you do shots. Gotta say, I'm more than a little bummed out to be leaving so soon, Schlatt told him as he sat in his own chair, taking a long sip of his drink. Gonna miss the vodka? Wilbur asked, raising an eyebrow. Schlatt huffed. Duh. This shit is great, but goddamn is it expensive to import. He took another long swig, swirling the clear liquid in his glass before lifting his eyes to meet Wilbur's. His sip's shot glass chucked. I'm also more than a little annoyed that I didn't invite you for a drink sooner. Feel like we could have had a good thing going, Orpheus. Wilbur frowned. Thought you weren't one to bullshit your intentions, Schlatt. I'm not, Schlatt said, leaning back in his seat. Yeah, I think you're a stupid kid who needs to give up on trying to stay out of the Empire because it's fucking pointless. But you're also not that bad to have a drink with when you're not acting all prissy and shit. Picking up his glass again, Wilbur took another long swig. There was a low buzz rising in the back of his mind, and his chest felt warm as the vodka settled into his blood. Don't try to tell me we could have been friends. I'm not fucking stupid. Schlatt laughed at this, the light of the fire glinting off his shiny horns as he tilted his head back. Yeah, no shit. We're not friends because you don't have friends in politics. That's not how the game works. Another sip. No trust, no friends, nothing except power grabs and vague threats. That's the life of a politician, baby. Wilbur thought back to his conversation with Filza. That had been a threat and a power grab rolled into one. All hostility, but with a core of genuine care somewhere deep down. That was what had confused Wilbur the most about the entire encounter. On the plus side, at least I won't have to hear Call's raving hallucinations anymore. Wilbur huffed, his gaze drifting back to the fire. Oh yeah, thank fuck for that. I don't understand half the stuff that comes out of his mouth, Schlatt said, kicking up his feet to rest on a footstool. You ever tried Kinoko shrooms, by the way? No, can't say I have, Wilbur told him. Don't do it. I tried him once when I was visiting Kinoko as part of some diplomatic party thing. I woke up 12 hours later, butt-ass naked, with a notebook sitting in front of me that read Secrets of the Universe on the front page in my own handwriting. Wilbur chuckled. What were the secrets of the universe? Well, according to all the infinite wisdom I had when I was high off my ass, apparently the answer to everything was protein powder, Schlatt said, cracking a grin as he took another swig. Protein powder. Protein powder. Nothing else. That's all that was written. Tipping his head back to the ceiling, Wilbur laughed louder than he had in ages, and let the vodka warm him from the inside out. The next morning, Wilbur woke with a horrible hangover and a rancid taste in his mouth. Man got drunk off of one glass of... Okay. Vodka's pretty strong, so honestly, I would probably get drunk off of one glass of vodka. Yeah, this is the longest chapter in this entire thing. It's felt like so long, but like not at the same time. The way I can tell how long it's been is because my throat is sore. And I forgot to look for my Listerine patches before stream. Wait, how much longer is on this video? Figure I should know that before. Okay, we have like plenty of time. We're good. Oh, it is? Drunk after one glass is crazy. Okay. Even if it's vodka? Fair enough. Excuse me. After spending a few hours chatting about pointless stuff with Schlatt, Wilbur... Okay, it was a few hours. I'm assuming he had more than one drink then. Wilbur had stumbled back to his room, utterly piss-drunk and eager to pass out. As soon as his head hit the pillow, he had been out like a light, and woke up several hours later to a sharp knocking at his door that felt like a hammer splitting open his skull. Now he was dressed somewhat presentable. This time, Wilbur didn't bother trying to hide his nightcap with Schlatt from Tommy, because he knew that Tommy would immediately notice how hungover he was, even if he tried to hide it. Tommy didn't seem thrilled, but also could tell that it wasn't worth it to try and ask Wilbur what he had talked to Schlatt about while he was in such a thick haze. Instead, he just threw clothes at Wilbur and helped him look somewhat not dead, and had to drag him out of their room so they could give their farewells to the leaders. They were in the throne room again. Wilbur's head was pounding something fierce, and nausea had settled like an old friend into the back of his throat. The lights were too bright, and even the lightest of footsteps made him flinch. This is where sunglasses would come in handy, but I don't know if those exist in this world. All he wanted was to crawl under his blankets and not exist for a few more hours. But his own choices had led him here, and now he had to suffer the consequences. It was similar to the day the leaders arrived for the summit. Philza was seated on his throne with Technoblade beside him, while Wilbur and Tommy stood off to the side, waiting to be addressed. "It was a pleasure meeting you both, Prince Theseus and Prince Orpheus," Michael was saying to them, bowing before turning to Philza and Technoblade. "As always, thank you for hosting, Your Majesty." "We'll be in touch, Chancellor," Philza said, nodding at Michael. With that, Michael McChill was the first out of the room, and Wilbur suspected they were going in order of arrival. "Kanoko appreciates your graciousness as always," Tina said next, speaking in a far more formal register than she had been the day before. Then, she turned to dip her head at Tommy and Wilbur. "May the between bless your future, and the other bless your past." Unsure of how to respond to that, both Wilbur and Tommy just nodded at her in return. That seemed to be enough, because she then moved back and allowed Carl to step up. There's a dirty spot on my glasses still. I didn't notice until now. "Your Majesty, Your Imperial Highness," Carl greeted, dipping his head at both Philza and Technoblade. "Things are gonna be great real soon. The future is promising as always." "Thank you both, Lucia and Your Highness, for taking the time to come here," Philza said, nodding to the two of them. Carl's golden eyes then flickered to Wilbur and Tommy, and both of them flinched when the seer stepped right in front of them and held out a hand to shake. There was a beat of silence as he waited expectantly. This wasn't court etiquette, but when it became clear he wasn't gonna budge, Tommy shook his hand. Carl grinned and squeezed Tommy's fingers once before dropping them, and then turned to Wilbur to do the same. This time, when Wilbur took Carl's hand, he pulled Wilbur closer so he could whisper in his ear. "This isn't goodbye. I'll be seeing you soon at your induction ceremony into the Empire." Without thinking, Wilbur ripped his hand out of Carl's and stumbled back. He glared at the seer, but Carl didn't seem fazed. "This feels a lot louder now. I don't like it." I'm turning it down more. There we go. Much better. He just kept smiling and returned to his spot beside Tina. The two bowed once more before following Michael out of the room. Then, it was the Badlands' turn to say their goodbyes. "We thank you for your hospitality as always, Phil," Bad said, grinning at Philza. "And I thank all of you for coming here on such short notice." Philza replied, folding his hands in front of him. "We'll be in contact with you soon," Technoblade added, something knowing flashing in his eyes. The counselors then returned to the brothers, a range of emotions flashing over each of their faces. Hold on, okay. It looks a bit too loud on the setting thing, so I'm just going to turn it down a bit in actual OBS. There we go, that should be a bit better. The counselors then turned to the brothers, a range of emotions flashing over each of their faces. Bad and Skeppy both seemed impatient to leave. Anfrost was rather neutral, while Ponk and CPK both had furrowed brows and tense shoulders. Out of all of them, though, Sam seemed the most impacted by the impending goodbye, regret and sadness warring across his face as his gaze flickered over them both. "Take care of yourselves, okay?" Sam said softly. I hope to see you both soon. Wilbur refused to meet Sam's eyes, while Tommy shot him the nastiest glare he could manage. Is someone knocking? One second. I can't tell if that knock was on my door or someone else's. Was that even a knock? Am I just going crazy? Anyway. Let's see. I thought there was someone knocking on my door. We're good now. No one was outside. Wilbur refused to meet Sam's eyes, while Tommy shot him the nastiest glare he could manage. Sam wilted under their coldness, but didn't say anything else as he stepped back to rejoin the other counselors. Make sure it's locked. Oh yeah. The way that the dorm rooms work here is, you need a key card and a code to enter. And not every student, like every student has a key card, but the codes are like like student sensitive, so not anybody could scan their card and put in like so that it makes it so that not any student could scan their card and enter the room. Yes, very, very, very good. I didn't really think about it. I didn't really think about, like, the reasoning for that until now. Anyway. But didn't say anything as he stepped back to rejoin the other counselors. As the Badlands filtered out, that only left one more person. Wilbur had to fight back the urge to snicker when he saw the deep bags hanging under Schlatt's eyes, and struggled to straighten his shoulders as the president bowed at the Emperor. Great to see you as always, Your Majesty and Your Imperial Highness, Schlatt drawled, the lights in the throne room reflecting off the grease on his face as he grinned at them. Keep me updated on how things go. We will, Philza said, his tone short. Try not to burn down Mantle in the meantime, Technoblade huffed. Schlatt chuckled at this. We've got a deal, gentlemen. Then, he was turning to face Tommy and Wilbur, and Tommy grimaced as he stumbled towards them. See you later, brat, was the only goodbye Tommy got, before Schlatt was turning his full focus to Wilbur. I would say good luck with the negotiations, but I want you to fuck up and lose, so I won't say that. Wilbur scoffed. I wouldn't expect anything else. Good. Don't have high expectations for anything or anyone. Schlatt then patted Wilbur's shoulder in some imitation of reassurance, but it was half-hearted to say the least. You owe me a drink next time we see each other, by the way. Fair enough, Wilbur acquiesced. There was a brief pause. Even though they were both horribly hungover, Wilbur met Schlatt's eyes, and he was certain they both perfectly understood the silent exchange that passed between them. We're not friends, but maybe in another life we could have been. And then, Schlatt was stumbling back down the steps. With one last messy bow, he followed Puffy out of the throne room, the door sliding shut behind him. The summit was over. Wilbur and Tommy were alone with Philza and Technoblade once more. Which meant now it was time for the real negotiations to begin. Oh man! Almost 2 hours! My god! Man, Bones and the Bees. Amazing writer. Fuck. Let's see. I'm really leaning into the slow build-up of everything with Fic. One of my biggest things I regret about World Forgetting was how I rushed a lot of the plot because I was afraid of losing interest. Okay. Bones and the Bees also has a Tumblr and Twitter. Go support her on every platform. Amazing, amazing stuff. Alright. I think that is going to be my stream for today. I did the wrong thing. There we go. Let's see who we can raid. Boop-a-doop-boop. Who is live? Okay. Congrats again on it. Thank you! It's I can't believe it's taken me this long. I've had every requirement that I needed for affiliates save for 3 average viewers in a month for the longest time. Let's raid Mel. Mel Shroombies. They're playing Minecraft. And it looks pretty fun. Go give them some love. Yeah. I don't know when I'm gonna be live next. Raid message? Can if you want to, I guess. Just don't spam, you know? Like I said, I don't know when I'm gonna be able to be live next. These past few days have been new student days at college, and I've been really busy. And of course, classes start up next week, but I'll probably find some time to stream next week at some point. I will try. And, as always, follow me on Twitter if you want to stay updated on when I'll be live, because I normally I say it a couple hours ahead of time, but today I just forgot. Yeah. Alright. Thank you so much for watching. It means a lot that you guys stick around. Did the command not work? Alright. Bye!